like me working on something and then releasing it, but I was commissioned to do this work or composition for the Noise Existence Festival that took place in March last year, 2019. And the theme was "There is no time here, not anymore." And it was all about like the ghosts of the past that still haunt the present. And the commission was included a performance I did for the festival, but then also the release. And the album was already made in 2019, but it just took ages to release it because there was so much post-production, and then the mastering took forever, and just like thinking about a way to release it. So this is why it was June 2020, and in spring 2020, I was just like, I wanted to be out there. Like, I don't care when, if it's summer, winter, whatever, it just needs to get out. And I feel like it's usually the case. Like artists just wants to have their music out right away because it presents a certain vibe they have at the moment. And then like just the whole post-production releasing process just takes so much time. Yeah, but for me, it was really special because I have an academic background, and then having this commissioned work, it was kind of an opportunity to fuse my academic background with this more like my more abstract hands-on approach to music. And then having this commissioned work where I got this whole theory apparatus, which was amazing because the curators of the festival, they gave me this chunk of material like music, films, text, and I was really so much material to be inspired. Yeah, and then I also noticed that it's a great scheme for my future albums, to kind of think of a theme and then really like first do the research, and then once your head is full, just let it all out through music. Yeah, and I feel like with Effia it worked really well. And maybe this is why it's so special, because I took quite a lot of time to just read and be all by myself and listen to all the music and watch all the films and just be inspired.
Yeah, can you tell us what you read and what you listened to and which films you watched? I think that's quite interesting, and an interesting approach to releasing a record that's not, I mean, it comes across so intimate and so personal.
Yeah, I started with reading a lot of Mark Fisher. It was just like in the what
My Mark Fisher books.
Yes, exactly. These two, just borrowed them to a friend. Ghost of My Life, Ontology, and Capitalist Realism. And he's also, he's a music journalist, and there's a lot of music references in his book. So I was mainly listening to the music that he mentioned. So it was a lot of Burial and also Japan. Like there's this one track by Japan, Ghosts. It's an amazing track. And then I was just listening to that on repeat, taking these long walks through the city and just being like in this state of hauntology, which means that like the ghosts of the past that haunt the present. And then, in Germany, you have these, one example, you have the Stolpersteine,
yes,
this golden stones that are everywhere where a Jewish person lived that was murdered. And then like having this theory in my mind, thinking about the ghosts of the past that still haunt the present, then taking a walk and then seeing one of the stones and reading the names, and then just thinking about like, I remember I had this one moment, I was listening to that Japan track, The Ghosts of My Life, and then I was walking through the city and I saw the stone with a female name. I think it was maybe Ilse or something. And then I had this moment where I hold on for a second and I looked up and I looked at the city, and then I just imagined this whole place like, I don't know, 80 years ago. And just thinking about like all these little boys that were walking there with these like trousers, and then like little Ilse being a person living there and the way she looked, and then like just being gone, deported, murdered. And then there's this stone that still reminds of her, like, and just thinking about like, what does that to me in this particular moment? Like just being a passenger in the 21st century, being aware of Germany's history, being aware of that there was this girl and she's somehow represented in a stone, which is pretty amazing because it's material. It's kind of, you can grab it, and yet it's so abstract. And there's this 10 layers of information that are in the stone. and then just like continuing to walk and still having that track in my head. So that was kind of the space where I was. It was so visual, it was so dense. And then what I also did is I just isolated myself a little bit. So I have less information from the world where I'm right now, but really like have this space for all the info that I kind of read into that. And that's actually quite interesting because I had the feeling like it's the power of curating. And also I, as an artist, have the power to create a certain state of being.
Yes.
I can decide, okay, I'm going to turn off social media now for several weeks. I'm not going to do this and that. Like, I'm not going to go to social spaces where I meet all these people because a lot of people is a lot of information. But I'm going to stay with like this one author. I'm going to stay with this one band. I'm going to stay with this one road that I walk every day. So I have more space for like Ilse entering the zone. Yeah, so that was like the process. It was really intense. And then it was also nice to do what I would usually do for a research paper, you know, see, okay, what is the theoretical context? What is interesting? What do I want to research? And then like write an essay, but instead of an essay, make music. And I feel like that was kind of a really a challenge because music works so differently. It's not like this is what person A and B said, I'm person C, so this is what I'm saying. But it was more like, how am I going to translate this super complex theory into music that for me is so abstract, and I wanted to be abstract? Because the reason why I started to make music in first place was because I wanted to get away from theory and just have something where I can express myself immediately. And then, okay, now I talked a lot, but
It's totally
it's coming, because then I came to the point where I noticed, okay, I think I'm not gonna like read Mark Fisher out loud and then put some ambient sounds underneath it. But I do feel there's this moment of like ghosts I feel in the present.
Yes.
And then it was kind of nice to just take maybe an idea of his theoretical body and work with that. So that's what I did. And then I started to just make random sounds from my synthesizers, which is for me like really modern. I have this like setup of synthesizers. Like I did most of the stuff analog with my Korg Mini Look, which I have here. I can actually show it because I'm in the studio right now, which is nice. I think the Mini Look is maybe a couple of years old, and then I just took a lot of samples from my phone because I just like to work with phone footage. And I also thought that the phone is kind of an interesting device because it functions as an archive. And then I was thinking about like stories of ghosts, and then I invited my friend Jasline Preach to just come to the studio and talk about her dreams. And she had these amazing stories of things that she dreamt. And then there was this one dream where she told me that her grandmother was appearing. And
so it was her actual dream?
Yes, it was her actual dream that you can hear in the record. And or it wasn't, I think it was her grandmother. And she died a couple of days before she wanted to go to Ghana to visit her. And she missed her, unfortunately, shortly, before
and
she
they
died.
never met. That's what she says in the song, right? They never actually met.
Exactly. And then the crazy thing happened is that she met her in her dreams. Like just while like a few days after she died. And like her ghost was present, but not in the physical reality, but in the reality of her dreams. Yeah.
Maybe a sign of the past and the present. Preach has also released a really, really fantastic album. And I want to ask you about your collaboration. But before, I want to go a few steps back. It really sounds like you were in an intense state of mind while developing and actually producing Efia. And I think that for me, especially the thing about the found footage, or rather found sounds, is really interesting. I mean, you have such a great array of sounds in there. How did you actually come across them? Like, where did you get the sound of a tank from?
You have to say it's really simple. I just ripped it off of the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was conceptual because I thought that, or my idea was, because I'm really into noise, I just love noise. And then it wasn't like random that I just found the tank, but there was this conceptual idea that,
Yeah.
you know, Germany produces the Leopard 2 Panzer, like a big tank, and they sell it to a lot of states. And
From Turkey.
yes, exactly. And then the Turks, they use them to fight the Kurds. So that's also interesting because, I mean, I have a Kurdish background, but I'm socialized in Germany. But then just thinking about these roads, that they're still all connected. Like I live, or I actually profit from the benefits, that like the economical benefits of this country.
And
That,
from every Leopard 2 tank sold to a war zone, we do all profit off that, and
yeah,
enables us to have the money that funds events like this one.
exactly. And then I thought, like, it's so crazy because I profit from the money that is made by selling weapons to a state that kills the people where I'm from, you know, like, and this is the globalized 21st century. It's like everything is intervened with each other, not just time-wise, but also geographically. And then I thought, like, just taking the noise off that tank, I can kind of reclaim it in a way. Because I thought, even though it kills my people, or not even though, it's kind of a weird way to say, to start a sentence like that, but I can take like the sound of it and then I just use it for my own production, and I don't know, take a bit of that. Yeah, because I was really like thinking about that tank. I mean, it's such a big symbol, and there's been a lot of art about like yeah, armors, like guns and all that. But yeah, I thought that might be one approach. But it was actually kind of funny because I said that in one interview where they also asked me about the sounds I used. And then all these headlines came up, like the
Everyone copied from each other.
yeah, exactly. The anti-war album, or war. And then this whole narrative was constructed. And I was like, fuck, why did I say that? Because I felt like if you really listen, I would say it's more an album about ghosts, if you want to really simplify, than it is about war, you know? But I knew that this narrative is so catchy, and I was almost annoyed by it because I was like, oh man, listen. And then someone even wrote that Efia is Kurdish. And I said, and then I thought it's such a bullshit because there's no, like, not one note that says that it's a Kurdish person, you know? But I get it. It's kind of sexy.
But there's also the cover of the album, right? Can you? I mean, there is two, I presume, women of Kurdish origin on the cover. Maybe that also led to assumptions. Can you tell us a little bit more about the visual aspect of it?
Yeah. I was just doing some online research of like women in war, as Kurdish women in war. And then I found this picture and I was so amazed by it because I thought that's like, it's so hauntology because you can't really see what time it is, because it could be the 70s, but it could also be today because they have these outdoor jackets on, and like, and they're sitting in some kind of tent, and it's not really dateable, and I like that. And I also like that the female fighters on these pictures, they are not dressed up in war clothes, so you actually don't know if they are fighters or not, and you also don't know where it was shot. It's like, it's really, really ambivalent, but you do see two like Middle Eastern women, if you just go by the phenotypes, sitting there really closely to each other. So there's still codes that you read into the picture, even though the picture doesn't give you any distinct information. But there is a collage in a collage. Like, I really like how the picture is a collage. So you have all these different fabrics. And the one, like the blue one, looks super sci-fi because it's this like synthetic tent fabric. And then it's super collagey because they also have these blankets in front of them in so many different layers. And then above their heads is a collage. Like, if you look at the picture, it's also a collage. And if you know a little bit about like the Kurdish resistance movement, you can even identify the martyrs in that collage.
Oh, wow.
Yes, like there's Zilan, she was the first like suicide bomber martyr of the Kurdish resistance movement. And yeah, it's a really interesting picture. But I think the reason why I chose it in the end was because I like the female bonding. It looks like.
Yeah, I wanted to say it feels so intimate, just like the music also feels intimate, not necessarily beautiful in the classical sense, but very, yeah, intimate and very close to some to an idea of humanity that I share, I guess.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. No, it's really nice. I thought this, like the two women, I also saw me and Jesslyn in that. But she's my friend, and her voice is on the record, and that was like, that really means a lot to me because she's really like a close friend. And I thought like it's also about friendship, you know, like these two women on the cover, but then two women working behind the cover, you know, it's kind of, and I think maybe the reason why it's so close or feels so personal and intimate is because that's how I felt it when I made it.
Okay.
I think maybe it's the biggest challenge I face as an artist or a person who makes art, to make like something that is like honest and that just really comes from the inside. And then it's kind of interesting how you can feed this insight and then really train yourself to just express what you have inside of yourself. I know it sounds super pathetic, but it is a big challenge not to be like distracted by all the outside influences, you know, like, and the forces. There's so many forces outside of you, you know, and then just really focus and be like, okay, what do I feel right now? How do I feel right now? And as I told you, it was a really intense state of mind, like just again standing in front of the stone for, I don't know, 10 minutes and just philosophizing about the crazy world we live in. And then keeping that, nourishing that, going to the studio and feeding the music off from that, and not going anywhere else, like being in this state. And I think I'm super happy to hear that it felt to you like that, because then I was able to maybe transport a feeling and share that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because at the same time it felt very not, it didn't have a feeling of community to me. I felt it kind of transported a certain isolation, which I think, based on what you just told us, really mirrors your experience while recording. Not a isolation in sense of being alone, but rather an isolation of while being with your own thoughts. And it's the same feeling that I have when I listen to Burial. And you just mentioned Burial. I'm a massive Burial fan. And there were so many, to me, there was so many similarities between his especially early work and Effia to me, in the sense that it also has the sense of introspection and isolation. Your other record that was also released this year, Ava, to me felt completely different, where Effia is really introspective. Ava felt more, yeah, like going forward, very aggressive. Can you tell us about the process and how you, yeah, kind of worked on these two? What was the difference of working on these two records?
Yeah, I would say it's really interesting that you say that, and it's so true, because that was exactly how it felt making it. Like with Effia, I felt like I was totally in that, like, yeah, I was only with the ghosts. I was thinking, who are the ghosts? And then these were my friends, you know, and I was just chilling with them. I was like, Mark, Jazz Dreams, Jaslene's Dreams, and like the few artists that he mentions, and then the ones that I kind of came up with because I knew like I need them right now. Like our example, Ilse. She's just there suddenly, and I'm like, whoa, I'm just making her up right now, so I can take her with me on this journey. So I didn't feel, I was isolated, but I didn't feel alone at all, because I had like all these persons in my head, and they're ghosts. And I do believe that like realities coexist, and I don't really think about them as like people from a different reality, but there's like just me thinking about them already makes them like real. And this is maybe why this feeling of inwardness is there. And then with Ava, it was really different, because I was just really expressive in a way. Like it was really for me about like taking these sounds and just getting them out there, like, and processing all the sounds that I hear into a really intense, hyper expressive state of mind. So it felt,
I mean, it's gorgeous. At the same time, I felt it was very abrasive in a sense, like, and it felt, that one felt much more aggressive, and yes, to a sense also warlike to me. What was the inspiration between that record?
With Ava is, okay, I'm just going to tell a bit about it. There's a lot of screams that you hear, like just really crazy vocal stuff. And I took most of it just samples from like genocide war videos, because I was really inspired by like how you react to trauma with your voice. It's like, and one sample was when Nadia Murad, who managed to escape from ISIS, when she saw the house of her parents the first time after they've been killed by ISIS.
And there's video of that.
Yeah, in the video of that, there was like this news video, like a news station took her to the house where the horror happened. And then the only thing she could do in that moment, like the way she reacted, was to scream. And then I heard the scream, and I was just struck by the energy of it, because I thought like, wow, she like went through the absolute horror, like it couldn't be worse. And then like genocide, I feel like the worst, like the most horrible thing that can happen in this world is genocide. It's like there's nothing more brutal than genocide in the world. And then just seeing how this trauma kind of, translated into this powerful scream, and just the frequencies of it and her expression. And there was so much energy. And I was just blown away by it. And then what I did was I took that sample and I just manipulated it. And then it started to become this red thread in the album. But I'm a bit more careful about like talking about using it, because I know that it's totally interpretation of mine. And I know that there's also a level of romanticization, because what happened.
Mention that,
Yeah, because I also romanticize her actions.
And her strength, maybe. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure someone in the situation would prefer to not have this kind of energy that you mentioned.
Exactly. And here I am just like taking it. And there's a level of appropriating. And I think this is why for me it's important to just really make something out of it, not just reproduce it and exploit it, but to really be like, okay, this has there's a reason why I feel so close to it, because as a Yazidi woman. But I do have a different approach, because I'm not the one who experienced that on a personal level. Like I maybe have to do with that around 5 corners, and then just taking these sounds and being like, I'm just gonna even make them louder, make them even more aggressive, and just show like how powerful resilience can be. And then I think Ava for me was more an album about a possible form of resilience through sound, which Effia wasn't. Effia is not about resilience. Effia is about like, it's my hauntology album, and it's about ghosts and dreams and friendship. But I feel like Ava is really about like the sound of resilience.
Did producing Ava help you to cope with seeing with the news, to a sense? My family is from Iran, and I remember whenever something is going on there, it's really tough to cope with reading the news. It's hard to stop reading it and hard to stop it basically messing up my mind. Hard to stop it from taking it to my dreams and waking up fearful for the people I know in this country that's far away, that's kind of has something to do with me, at the same time doesn't, because I'm very German and was born and grew up here. So did producing Ava help you to cope with these things? Cope with maybe also, to me, there's also a little bit of guilt that I'm not there. I'm having this very comfortable life and very free life, whereas people over there do not. So yeah, sorry. Did making art from it, making art from the news, basically, help?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when you make music, there's always this catharsis happening. Like, this is always how I feel, even if it's not about a specific scene. Like, I go to the studio, I express myself, I feel better afterwards, relieved. Like, even though, like, if I have energy in myself that I need to express, even though it's just like, oh, it's a happy day and I feel like I want to make a track, and then I just make a track, you know, and there's still something happened. I did something. I made sense of my life. I didn't just sleep and eat, you know, like I played the piano. And this is my, I would say, approach to art generally. Like, it just gives me sense in a way. Like, and then there's always that already gives me like sense. And then making art about something that is connected to trauma, I would say also, yeah, it has a healing effect, definitely. And I think I don't feel this guilt thing because I'm past over that, I have to be honest, because I think it's great that I live a safe life where I can just live freely. And I don't think that the problem is that I have that. The problem is that the others don't. Like,
Absolutely.
that's the thing. And I feel like this is also like ontology at its best, that all these realities coexist. And even though, like, I was born in Kurdistan, but I was socialized in Germany, and I would say that most of my life happened here, but the ghosts of Kurdistan are still really here at the present. For example, just by talking about it, just to making art through it. So I'm also kind of a curator of which reality I kind of construct and therefore make it real. You know, like, I know if I talk about these topics, I will give them more attention in a way. So I also think about it like that. And then with Ava, it's like when I read the news and I see all these horrible pictures and information, it becomes part of my general information. And I feel like everything that forms my life kind of will be in some way processed in my expression.
It's really interesting you mentioned this making your own reality. I was just reading Gia Tolentino's essays. It's a small book called Trick Mirror with a lot of good essays, and she just mentioned in the last one I read this fact of, as a writer, you leave out stuff and include other information, and that's also shaping reality and shaping memory, which you kind of do by also layering all these sometimes conflicting sounds. How do you pick and choose from your library of found sounds and footage?
Yeah, I think this is where it comes to the craft of editing, and which is, I would say, a really tough one, and one that needs
As a writer,
time. Yes, And no matter which field, if it's film, sound, text, like it's all about editing. Like everyone who makes art knows that. And then I feel like this is it. Like it's about like editing, really listening carefully, and then just being aware which sound needs space, which not, and how do that affect each other. Like it does a difference if this one drum loop goes on 5 minutes or if it's only there for 2 minutes. Like it all matters. And then I feel like it's just it's decision making and editing. Because sometimes there's also not a right or wrong. Sometimes it's just like there are different possibilities.
Different paths maybe to go down.
Yeah. And I feel like with Ava, for example, it was a really delicate editing process because I really had to think about, okay, where do I use, for example, samples of vocal samples and when not? Because I feel like every time I use them, the whole narrative of the album goes into a different direction. Like there's this one track Case where you just have a synth loop for 4 minutes or 3.5 before the actual voice drops, just for 15 seconds. And my idea was that it's kind of it's the genocide spiral, that history moves circular and not linear. And then the loop is happening over and over again, but it sounds different every time. And it's probably one of the most complex tracks that I ever made, because what you don't know as a listener is that it has like about 20 layers, and it's really like fine mix. And then every 3.5 minutes the scream drops, and that's it, because it's like the time and history evolves and develops and changes, and then boom, genocide again, and then this whole spiel just happens again. So that's what I mean by editing. It was really important, even though that is super seductive to use a lot of vocals because they're so effectful, to just be like super rigid and be like, no, 10 seconds, that's it. And then the great thing about music is I know all of that, and I have this concept and I have this idea, and it's super intellectualized, but you don't have to know. All you need to do is listen to it, and then maybe you feel it, maybe not. It's okay, but in the end, you're going to feel something.
Even if it's not being able to relate to it, that's a feeling too. That's also interesting to explore.
Yeah, and you would still be struck by the scream, like you would still be like, whoa, what the fuck is going on, And then it doesn't matter if you can personally relate. Like, just listen.
For people who want to learn how to do this, how to layer sounds, how to edit, to me, as a writer, I find it really hard to explain because it's kind of a black box. And how can you kind of walk us through how you do it? Or is it a black box of, I don't know, creative expression for you too?
I would say super practically, the way I start a composition is I just collect sounds. And then I have
or with a target?
Sometimes I have a motive, like with Effia. For example, what I did with Effia, it's actually quite interesting, is I usually decide which are going to be my 3 or 4 sound sources.
Okay.
Effia, it was here field recordings, and I just, rules are really helpful sometimes. So my rule was field recordings only from the kitchen. I wanted them to be from the domestic space of the kitchen. Yeah,
which
because
also kind of relates to the introspective bit of it.
Exactly. And I'm kind of obsessed with the domestic space of kitchen because I grew up with so many women just being like the greatest housewives on all the time and the greatest cooks and just like rocking their domestic life. Yeah, and then it's just a thing, like this whole kitchen thing. Like it's such an interesting space. And then this relation to like just all the instruments they use and what they prepare and compose with these instruments. Yeah, I'm super fascinated. And then just like seeing, I have a huge family and there's so many strong women and the kitchen is kind of their stage. So I thought maybe that's my space for field recordings. So I did a sample pack with just my Zoom recorder recording all kinds of different sounds in the kitchen. like just like taking some alufolie and then taking some like a fork and just like hitting it against the wall. And yeah, so I created the sample pack, so I have more like organic original sounds. And then my second source was just my two synthesizers that I have. It's like a Korg ER1 drum machine and my Korg Minilogue, but with Effia it was just the Minilogue. So I knew that the synthetic sounds are coming from the Minilogue, the more organic, noisy stuff is coming from the kitchen. And then I have the vocals, which are spoken by Jaslina, and then there's another vocalist, Maslum Neves, a good friend of mine. And the fourth source are stuff from my phone, because I also wanted to add a different layer of time. And then I just looked at my phone archive. I think archive is a really nice word. And then I found these videos from weddings, and I thought, like Kurdish weddings, and I thought it's really nice to the theme, because you have these old folk tracks sung at weddings from a community that lives in the diaspora, which is also a nice mix of time, because also this music is now played on samplers and not on like def is this drum. And I remember 20 years ago when we went to weddings, there was a drum player and there was the SAS player. And now what they have is like they have Korg samplers, and then they just fire the beats up from the Korg. It's amazing. And then
Babka too. I mean, the Syrian style of music, it's also just a synthesizer and someone singing.
Yeah. And then, that was my fourth source. And then what I just did is I just have this more like chaotic, non-linear process where I have all these sounds and then I just mix them up all together. Like I take a synth melody that I made that I liked and recorded. Then I put like a voice of Jaslina on top of it. And then I add a few noise from the kitchen. And then that's how the song starts to develop. And then with Effia, I was also playing a lot of piano during that time. So I also recorded some acoustic piano, and then I just like chopped it up and reversed it. So it sounds almost like a guitar, like on the track Lamia, the fourth one.
Yeah.
It's amazing because I just manipulated my piano sample. Yeah, but this is what I do, is like, it's kind of a good mix of working more like intuitive and chaotic and then editing the mess, which is also the way I write. Like the first thing I do is just write everything I have in my head. So I have material. Then I have 3 pages of text, and then I edit half of it, like half of a page out of it. And I think this is also good for filming. Like first I film everything I found interesting, and then I have material. And I feel like sometimes people maybe underestimate the value of material.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, like and I think for material to get material, I think you need to be as free as possible.
That is, yeah, I find that's really interesting, because I think for a lot of people, you start censoring yourself in your head instead of collecting stuff first. And it's hard to let that go, especially in our very capitalist, resource scarce times. It's hard to let go and just be able to collect stuff first without regard whether it's good enough.
Yeah, I think my advice would be, I totally agree, is all you need is a good preset. Like you need a good preset so you're as free as possible to do whatever the fuck you want and not think about these, is this good enough bullshit. Like really have a preset, even if it's just like, oh, I'm inspired by this idea. So I'm gonna just collect a lot of stuff and then see, like, and just if I don't know how to collect it, I'm gonna be inspired by this idea. So for example, take the theme of a ghost. And then you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, ghost, I'm gonna ask like my friend to tell me something about her dreams, because ghosts appear in dreams. And then I'm just gonna record some random harmonies on my synthesizers that sound nice to me. And then I'm gonna take random sounds from my kitchen. And then I'm gonna record some piano, and that's it. And I'm gonna mix it all up. But I have like 3 hours of sound footage. And eventually, if I mix it all together, it's gonna make sense.
That is a good call. Just want to remind everyone who's listening in, feel free to ask questions. Just type them into this Q&A box, and we'll try to answer as many as possible in a bit. Don't be shy. And I have one question about the type of music you make. I would say it's pretty, not necessarily clear cut, but I would definitely say it's ambient. And the criticism about ambient for a long time was that it's so apolitical. Whereas I found your music, and from what you just told us, very political. So what's your stance towards ambient that had a bad name for a long time?
Yeah, I think for me, it's also interesting, like, when is music political, you know? Isn't someone making art already kind of a radical thing, you know? And then that's the thing. But of course, there's also a certain attitude with which you do things. I feel like, yeah, for me, making art still is quite a radical process. Is what do I do with my life? Like, what do I do with my existence? Like, for me, art is also really philosophical process. Like, just
in what sense?
Yeah, just being amazed by what we are able to do, like, or what is there, you know? Like, sometimes I look at a painting and I'm like, whoa, paint. Like, and then people come up with this thing that we get amused by paint, but it's the same with music, you know? Like, when I listen to music, I'm like, whoa, this shit exists. Like, frequencies stimulate our bodies and perception. And then, yeah, and I think, like, coming from that is kind of a different thing, that if I'm like, oh, I'm going to produce this album so I can make a lot of money out of it, which is also kind of a political approach.
I mean, yeah, I don't think you can ever be not political. Choosing not to make something, choosing to say what you do is not political is also a political stance.
Yeah, exactly. And I would argue, of course, everything is political. If I have like an apolitical bro techno producer playing at big festivals making a lot of money, I know that, like, he's operating in a super hyper capitalist system, and he is the reason why other people are suffering, and that also makes him kind of a player in this game. So yeah, but I see there's a question.
Yes, and a really good one at that. Do you have any collaborators you would like to work with in the future, local or international artists coming from Marina?
I think I would be too afraid to work with strangers. Like, I really like collaborating with my friends because we know each other, but I feel like I couldn't collaborate with someone that I don't know, because I would be too afraid that, I don't know, we don't vibe, you know? I feel like for me, collaborating with someone is really important to have a good vibe. This is why I can collaborate with Jess, my friend, Preach, because I know her very well and we have a lot of fun. So it's basically just like doing something together, and then we have a drink afterwards. So I would say, if there's local artists I'd like to collaborate with, I would say probably people from my friend circle. So maybe again Preach, because she's so amazing and I love her so much.
Her voice is brilliant. But while you were answering, I was thinking, you're using, for example, the screams in on Ava. That's also kind of collaborating, is it not?
I would disagree, because I didn't ask them. You know, like, I don't know, but I don't know if that is kind of a thing that makes a collaboration, that people on both sides have to agree, but I would say so. Like,
Yeah.
but and people didn't, but I would say that I'm probably more like inspired what other people produce, and that's the thing about sampling. This is maybe a topic, like, that what I do is I sample and I get just really inspired by footage that is already out there. Like, I don't think that I'm some kind of genius that have to come up with everything because I'm the great inventor. So I know that there's already a lot of stuff pre-existing and it's just there, but I can totally make it my own by doing an interpretation.
I think sampling is such an interesting cultural practice. It's very much a cultural practice of the 20th century. You need recording has to be possible for sampling to be a thing, and it kind of really fits in with this main thought in this musical view on hauntology, which was kind of invented by Derrida and then taken over by Mark Fisher in his theories, because you take the past and kind of reshape it, and we never, it kind of lives on in a different form, sort of like a zombie. How what's your view on the whole topic of rights, etc., in sampling? Because this debate just never stops and is always evolving.
Yeah, I think my take on it is I really love sampling, and I think it's a great practice to contextualize material that is already there. I think it's just really, there's a difference between, I would say, stealing and reinterpreting, but of course it's like super gray zone-y. And I wouldn't know how to draw the exact line, but I'm totally in favor of this practice that I also make use of. For example, sampling a woman's voice in a track on Efia, like where I just took the sample of this recording from a wedding, but it was so important that it's there, and I feel like it was totally, you could see my vision on that.
Oh yeah.
I could feel that it was not about like me exploiting this female voice, but more about like the voice being essential to kind of make something out of on my own. So yeah.
The weddings you mentioned, were these recordings by yourself? Did you go to these weddings and actually save it?
Yeah, it's a really, really random process. It's like sometimes I'm somewhere and it's just like something interesting happens and I record it, and then it happens later, like weeks later, that I'm like, whoa, this is actually pretty interesting. Yeah. This is why I feel like it's great to just, I mean, you have with a phone, you just have a constant recording device on you, because I don't carry my studio or my Zoom with me all the time. But with the phone, it's just like sometimes I just go through my phone and I see all these images that I collected, and then it just comes again. And it's super interesting because I sometimes don't even do it on purpose, but it all comes back at some point, and there's another question.
Yes, and one that I wanted to ask next too. So what are your future plans? Has the current pandemic had any impact on your future goals? A lot of artists have pushed back releases as a result of the current situation, which kind of ties into my first questions regarding the records coming out last summer.
Yeah. So I have another collabo record coming up, a tape, with La Donna, a great producer and friend of mine. And we made this super, I would say, beautiful ambient album, which will be released on New Primitive in December. And then I'm doing the next album with Pudel also, which will probably be released March 2021. So I don't give a shit about the circumstances. It does not affect my release plan. And I think that's the way you have to go, because like just waiting for this shit to be over, or just like, yeah, I think you just got to do what you got to do and just put it out the way you would put it out, because who knows how long this will go. And yeah, so you can be happy. There will be a lot of music. So the next release is for December, and then March, and then I haven't produced anything for a while, which is unbelievable due to the many releases. But yeah, I think I would just cave into the studio, which is my winter plan. So yes.
Sounds like a good plan for the probably upcoming lockdown. Not to be gloomy or anything.
Yeah.
But you, in our talk previous to this, in preparation, you mentioned the next record will have more hits. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, because we were talking about like Effia is a super like a storytelling driven album, and I would say it's the best if you listen to it like as a whole. It is. I know artists say that a lot about their albums, but this is, I feel like, especially one that you have to listen to as a whole, also Ava. And then, but the next one that will be released on the Poodle, DNA, I would say it's a bit different because it has like beats, like drum beats, which will be probably the first one ever I have in a track. And yeah, so it's a bit more dancey. It even has like one or two like more clubby tunes. Mm-hmm. And I think this is why you have this more like hit thing. I feel like there are two tracks that could be singles. And I feel like in the albums before, I never made singles. It was just one piece in different chapters. And now I feel like with the third one, they're actually singles, and there will be a music video, and yeah, it's a bit different. Yeah, but it's still a mix. It still has also this more ambient vibe to it.
So we will be dancing with ghosts.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm really excited about that. Do you guys have any more questions for the last few minutes we have together? Type them in. Otherwise, I'll just continue asking you stuff. So what is your inspiration beyond hauntology, which you kind of were told to read for a festival which inspired so many great things in you, for you? What is other inspiration that you reach to when you work?
I feel like maybe that's also interesting for the last month that happened, but I kind of train myself to be just really like to a sensitive perception. Mm-hmm. Like I started to walk to my studio, which was new because before that I always took the bike, but now I'm walking, and these walks, they're about like an hour long, that really help me like meditate and just be really aware of my environment, of my surrounding. And I feel like especially in lockdown and isolation, there was this moment when I left the house, which barely happened. As you know, we all like during lockdown just left the house to buy food. And when I left the house, I was suddenly so aware, and I had such a sensitive perception. Like I was like, whoa, this street is like a big giant gray X just cuts through the landscape, you know? And then you go see the Alster, the city lake in Hamburg, the city river. And I'm like, whoa, there's this giant mirror like in this street, and the sun is reflecting on it and it's glittering. Like, what the fuck is going on? And then you have cars. Like, what the fuck, cars, you know? Like, what? And then suddenly you look in front of yourself and it's all so sci-fi, you know? You have these cars crossing these giant gray streets, and then you have this big lake, and then the sun, there's the fucking sun. Like, what the fuck is going on? And then I go into the train station if I'm too tired. And then there's this little boy, and he looks like 18 years old, and he asks everyone for money because he's addicted to drugs. And then he pulls up his pants, and you can see how bony and skinny he is. And you just really become aware of that this happened. And I'm sitting there thinking like, that dude also had a mother, you know? And then I know this is like, I'm mixing up things right now, but I feel like this is my process of inspiration, because then I think about this boy and I'm sad about like him already being addicted, like so young. And I'm thinking, okay, what happened with his mother? Like either she was probably in a really desperate situation. Was she even there, you know? But she did give birth to him. Like, of course, someone did. And then I go to my studio. So, and then I'm sitting there.
So basically what I read from that, and it's something I do too, or try to do more whenever I'm in a rut, try to see my very surrounding, my everyday surrounding with a fresh perspective. Yeah. And it's really tough to kind of get yourself out of your rut but it's so helpful, right? To get inspired again, especially when we're all forced to stay where we are.
Yeah, I think you should never stop wondering. That's the thing. And then it's interesting that right now I feel like being aware of that the world is a mystery. It's almost like a button that you can turn on. Maybe it's a nice thing to end this talk, but just like reminding that state of being. Like even when the normal hectic life happens again, when I'm on my walk, I still think like, hey, you can still remember this mode of perception, and maybe you're even able to just turn it on again, and almost like a filter, and then be like, yeah, remember when that dude really moved you in the subway like this, and you were sad, but you were also having all these questions in your head. Okay, get back to that state.
That's some beautiful and really helpful advice for creativity to end on. Thank you so much for being with us all the way from Hamburg. Yes. And I'm so excited for your show, hopefully on Friday. Thanks so much, Dice Festival, for having us. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you too for the wonderful talk. I'm so inspired right now, and I hope all of you listening are too. And thank you so much, Leila, for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, for having me, and hopefully see you on Friday. Otherwise, you're gonna hear from me. Bye.
Bye.